Okay, so starting again, so we haven't heard anything I said. So we're trying to wrap our heads around the concept of making digits in multiple directions, as well as the question of can you make, which is Io's opinion. Io says you can't make conditions on two separate instances that are recurring. And we also have the question of Brera, can you make a decision now that affects something that you did in the past? So those are what we're playing with. Okay, so now Io, who says you can't do conditional placement based on two instances, so he doesn't hold like the Mishnah. But then according to Ula, the Ula continues says, but the response being, Gemara says, El Haditani, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, but what about Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon? Can you simply say that Io is saying according to their opinion? Because they say that you can't. We're separating out the bottom of the barrel of wine that's from the kutim and stuff, and you need to separate truma and maser from it. He says they all say you can't simply say at the bottom of the barrel. Assuming I leave 21 parts left at the end, part of that 21 is truma, part of it's maser, part of it's truma and maser or maser sheda. You can't do that. You can't. None of these conditions of like what's going to be later, what I'll pick, I'll separate it later. No, you can separate it now, or it's not going to work. So, right. So therefore, that implies that Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon also reject Brera, the retroactive designation, just like Io seemingly does as well. So Ula Zuze Ketani. So Ula actually taught a little bit different. He says the first, what's the first half of the Mishnah is not just Rabbi Meir, rather it's different Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda. So they're going to say that you can do this separation based on what's going to be at the bottom of the barrel. Rabbi Yossi, Rabbi Shimon, Rabbi Shimon say no, you cannot do that. That it is forbidden to do the retroactive designation based on what's going to happen at the end on the bottom. So now now we figured out that we don't throw out Io, but the question is what each of the people how to properly phrase the original Mishnah, which opinions truly hold a Brera, which one don't. Sava Rabbi Yossi ain't Brera. Does Rabbi Yossi really reject the concept of Brera, that you can retroactively designate something? Hatanan, then we learn in another Mishnah. Rabbi Yossi Omer, Shtei Nashim Shalachku et Kineim Be'eruv. So if two women had jointly bought their kinim, meaning their birds, and they wanted to, and they're trying to bring it to for their korban that they owe, right? So it says that their korban yoledet or the korban zava, right? So when we're bringing these birds, so let's say they bought jointly this nest of birds. By here, Eruv here means a joint acquiring, not in the Eruvin sense of Eruv, right? Oshanat no kinehem lakohen, or that whether they bought the set together, or if they jointly went and handed this nest worth of birds to the kohen. Ezo shirtza kohen yakriv olah, or ezo shirtza yakriv chata. The priest can then choose which one of the kiyum that they should be using as a sin offering, which one should be a burnt offering. So we see that the Kohen is basically handed two sets of birds for a total of 4, right? Right, 2 sets of 2, and then he can pick which 2 are gonna for each woman is gonna be a ola, which one's going to each woman, and which one is going to be an ola rachata. So, right, so therefore that implies that you can do Brera, like you handed him, simply 4 birds, and then all of a sudden he's deciding what they'll want. So Amarabba, Hatam Kishahinu. No, Rabba says no, you can't bring a proof about Rabbi Yosef's opinion from there, because they made a special condition that when they handed it over to the Kohen, here are all of our birds. You do it as you want. So it's not a question of Brera that he's picking it, and then their opinion is retroactively right. They originally stated, here they are, use them as you see fit, all in your hands. You're the shliach of both of us, so you do whatever you do, and it'll be fine. So if so, why do you even need to state that whole statement of the of the Kohen, because if the Kohen is being worked as their shaliach, then what's the difference? Kamash Malan, Kedar Fista. Dabra Fista ain't a kini meet parsha. So rather, this is teaching us that the law general follows Rav Chisda. Rav Chisda says, okay, so what is Rav Chisda's statement? Ein kini parshot ela ib l'kicha balim ib asiyat kohen. So in order for you to designate a the birds that are being used as offerings for they be for chatat or an olah, there's only two people who can make the designation. Either when the owner buys it, meaning when they purchased it, they had you purchased specifically for a given purpose, or by the Kohen making the determination, which means that this is supporting the fact that people can give it to the Kohen and he can make the decision on their behalf. It doesn't solely need to be done as soon as they had bought the item. There's no problem if you jointly bought the birds, as long as the Kohen can later decide that'll still be sufficient. Okay, so now we're on Lamed Zayin and Bet. Right, so that's how we solved the question. That was one. So now we don't really know what Rabbi Yossi holds about Brera. Does he hold or doesn't he hold of Brera? So we're still trying to figure it out. Lakati, some Rabbi Yossi ain't Brera. And the question we can ask again is, wait, does Rabbi Yossi really hold there's no Brera, that you can't make retroactive designations? So now there's another statement we're going to ask about. Hatanya, Ama Arash, Ama Lachaver, Kafli Aguda Achat Shel Yerek, Uguska Achat. Eno Tzarich Las there, Divi Rabbi Yossi. So if a Amar, somebody who's not stringent in separating of Trumot and Masro, were to ask a Chaver, somebody who is stringent, to go buy for me a bundle of these vegetables or this cake. So the Chaver does not need to separate out Trumot and Masro on behalf of the Amaretz, who will presumably not be separating on his own. Diva Rabbi Yossi, as Rabbi Yossi says. So whereas Rabbi Yossi says that since Rabbi Yossi is now stating that this is fine, so that since he bought it without designated, when he bought his food, he didn't say which one of these bundles is mine, which one of these bundles is for the Amaret, so therefore he's not required to immediately separate out Trumot and Masro. Because in order to become a Chaver, you have to basically make a swear, come from a basin, that you are going to always have your all fruits and vegetables in your possession that are yours will have to be separated Trumot and Masro immediately. So if he's giving it to the Amaret stuff wouldn't be under the condition that he had sworn to. So. Right, so Rabbi Yossi is saying that you're allowed to that basically, even though you bought two bundles and you only decide to give him one when you see him, that's still considered to be enough to say that it's as if it's never been in your possession the whole time. So you decided to hand it to him. The Chachamim say, no, you must separate Trumot and Masro because there's no Brera, so you don't know which one is going to be yours. So as said right now, they both could potentially be are both yours. So therefore, you have to separate Trumot and Masro now. So right, so now the problem is that it seems like Rabbi Yossi doesn't hold of Brera. So no, opposite. Rabbi Yossi says that you're supposed to tease it because you're supposed to separate Trumot and Masro because since he's giving once it's in his possession, right? We don't care what you're going to decide later, right? There's no Brera of Rabbi Yossi, and that's why. So if he switches the pins around, then actually Rabbi Yossi in both cases fits well. He says you can't make a later determination; you have to act based on what it looks like now, right? We don't care about what will happen later or what happened before. To do it based on what the reality is right now. So therefore, we have solved. We figured out Rabbi Yossi's opinion. We dealt with the the Mishnah, the problematic Beit. So now Rabbi Yossi says you cannot make record designation, and then everything looks nice and clean. So Tashma. So let's try and figure out anything about the concept of how Brera works in Rabbi Yossi. So Ha'omer ma'aser sheyesh li b'beiti mechula al sela shetaleh b'yadi min hakis. Rabbi Yossi Omer mechula. So now the other case is that if you basically, so you're trying to separate out my Meister Sheni, and you already have the Meister Sheni separated, and basically, and currently, let's say and you want to put it on a coin now. So what do? You say that the Mazda that I have in my house, I want the kedusha from that Meister Sheni to go onto the coin that will come out first out of my pocket. Rabbi Yossi says that this works, right? That the kedusha is transferred, right? And that it is, and that therefore the original the fruit in your home is now much for everybody to eat, and the kedusha is now simply on the coin that you pulled out of your pocket. So this is a problem because that implies that you're doing breira because you're making it because you're separating it now, even though you haven't yet picked the coin, which is a problem. So, no, say the opposite. Actually, Rabbi Yossi says that it doesn't work, and therefore Rabbi Yossi is consistent in his opinion of saying that you cannot do breira, no retroactive decision making. So my tarte became chada, April chada became tartar. Wait, so we've had three cases, one of which worked pretty well. Right, we have our original one. So we brought four cases. Right, there was that of our original Mishnah. Then there was one case we threw out because we said the case was different altogether. And then there was two where we said that you have to switch Rabbi Yossi's opinion with the other person's opinion in the statement. So the question is, so why are we switching Rabbi Yossi's opinion twice and leaving it only intact in our Mishnah? Shouldn't you do the opposite? If there's only one case that's consistent, say that in our Mishnah is where in the Mishnah of the wine is the one where Rabbi Yossi is inconsistent. Why are you switching more? Why are you so sure that that's his true statement, not the other ones? Like, why are you switching one versus the other? So, no, it's because the answer is that you definitely must have taught that this Braita was taught backward. The Tani Seifa, as it says at the end of the Braita, Moder Rabbi Yossi b'Omer Maaser sheyesh li b'tof beiti yehi mechol al sela chadasha shetaleh b'yadi min hakis shechilel. So rather no, the reason we know that is because of the latter half of that same Braita and the Tosefta, where it says that the following part of the Tosefta was that the Maaser Sheni that I have in my house, if kedusha will be transferred onto the new coin that I pull out of my pocket. So, and that's what it works. That here it is. So in the case where you said to be on the new coin, presumably you only had one new coin in your pocket, that's why you chose that one, is when it works. But it would imply that if you simply didn't determine at all which coin it's going to be, it wouldn't have worked. Like saying that if you have a bunch of preferably those coinage, but so then, right, so whether you chose the nice, shiny, brand new coin from the mint, or you chose the one that's been in circulation for months and is covered in dirt and grime, right? So which one is it going to be? So the answer is, so since you chose which one it is, that's why so really it's not 1 versus 2, it's 2 versus 1, which is why we flipped, is because one of them was certainly already should have been in the other camp. So we're not flipping the majority, we're only flipping the minority, really. So hi Sela, I mean, what do we mean by when you said a new Sela, the new coin? Ike tarte slot. If you have 2 new, 3 old, if you say that there's 2 or 3 coins in his pouch, and you're not, and then multiple ones that could be are the new coins, then we're back to the beginning. But if you're saying, but there's only 1 coin in your pouch in general for both first and last case, then what do you mean by saying ta'alek? Because it's like you have 1 coin. So what is it? Like, I don't understand. What's into the first case and second case? Or we said it as in, why are you saying the word ta'alek there's only 1? And also the second case, why are you saying, right? If you have in mind which one it is, why are you saying that ta'alek as well? It seems to be. Right, what do you mean by why are you saying shatala if there's potentially only 1 coin, or if the coin you had in mind? What does that mean, that the new coin or the or one of the coins that I will take. That means that you're definitely, choosing. And so, how's that not a case of brera? Amar le Rabba Rav Nachman, man hai tana da'afilu b'drabanan le brera. So, right. So sorry, skip the line there. I need to tani reisha tala tani nami seifa tala. So the answer is no. So the way we're talking, that actually the first case is truly case of tala if you're actually picking. But the second one, it's not that you actually are saying that the coin that will come out, you know which coin it is. It's the new one, the newest one you have in your pocket. Just you'll use a similar language because since in the Reisha it said the word tala, therefore the seifa use the term take out of your pocket, use the term tala. To not indicate that you're any issue of choosing, rather because that's simply how it is. Amrle Rav Nachman. So now Rav Nachman said to Rav Nachman, Man hai tana dafil b'Rabbanan late leibir. So who is the tana who has the opinion that even according to Chachamim you cannot use brera? The Tanya, as we learned in a Breita. Amar l'chamisha harinim arev al eze mikem she'ertzeh. If you told a woman and said to 5 people, any one of you can make an Eruv on my behalf. Ratziti yelech, or tziti lo yelech, ratza b'od yom eruvo eruv, v'shachashecha ein eruvo eruv. So, is there really somebody says that all of them say that there's no such case as brera? Here's the case that looks very much like brera. You told 5 people, right? Everybody go, take, go when you're heading home. Take, set aside a piece, some bread for me, or some for the Eruv woman, and then wherever I decide to go, I'll go. And if I don't decide to go to you, then I won't see you. Right? So you didn't know which one of your friends wanted to go over for Shabbos lunch. So this was your solution to how you can manage to visit whichever one you decided you wanted to go to. But only one of them. So if you decided I'm going to go to X person's house before Shabbos or Yom Tov, then it works. But he decides only after dark, then his Eruv did not work. So that implies that that you cannot do retroactive designation whatsoever. So, because you have to have made the decision before, even though you have your 5 choices, and then you have to just make the decision before. You can't make the decision after dark. So that means there's no case where you're allowed to do retroactive decision making or use brera. So Ishtik, and Rav Nachman, is like silent. He didn't say anything because he didn't have a response. So that now the Gemara is like, wait, why was he quiet? Why didn't he simply state that Breita follows the opinion of the school of Ayo, and therefore, and that it's not an issue in general about brera. It's rather an issue of specifically about with Eruv and brera. No, lo shmielei. No, the answer is he hadn't heard of Ayo, and that's why. Sorry, not that he didn't hear of Ayo, but he didn't think that Ayo's version of Rabbi Yehuda's opinion was correct. Right? Not lo shmielei, he hadn't heard of it, but lo shmielei then the word shama in Aramaic can also mean kabel, except. Right? When we say Shema Yisrael, right? So that means both hear, O Israel, as well as accept the yoke of heaven. So just like it has 2 meanings in Hebrew, it has 2 meanings in Aramaic. That fun borrowing across languages is known as a calque, C-A-L-Q-U-E. In case you're curious as to what that thing in language is called, but that's what it is. We're in translation, it gains the meaning of another one, then goes back to the previous language. There are many fun examples of that. I will hopefully I'll probably mention in some shiur on Tanakh. Does not normally come so often in Gemara, but there we go. Okay. Rabbi Yosef Amar Tanai Shakal Tami Alma. So Rabbi Yosef said, "Have you removed these Tanaim from the world?" Meaning, what do you mean that there's nobody who says that you can do brera? Tanai, right? We have an explicit Machloket Tanaim, as we learned in the Beit. Tanya, Harini Ma'ariv l'Shabbatot Shakol Shana Ratzitei Lech Lortitei Lo Lech. So we've been talking about that if you want to make an Eruv now for all the Shabbos of the year, and if you want to go, then you can go. If you don't want to go, then you don't have to go. So basically, you set up your Eruv now, your Eruv Tchumen, and whether or not you decide to change your place of residence, you don't have to decide. You don't have to decide. We're going to be the whole year. The first time you place it. Rather, each week you can decide.
On Shabbos or before Shabbos?
You set your Eruv up before Shabbos, and we're going to get to that, right? So
The decision, I'm just saying, when do you have to make the decision? Okay, that's the question. Yeah.
Excellent question. We're about to get there. Very good question. So Ratzon Mibod Yom, Eruv. If you wanted to do it from the previous day, right? If you decided I'm going to follow it from on Friday, not yet Shabbos, Eruv, then your Eruv works. But if you wanted to decide on Shabbos, actually I really wanted to go there, and that's why I said my Eruv. So Rishimon Omer Eruvo Eruv. So here we have Rishimon saying that if you decided on Shabbos your Eruv is an Eruv, which implies that he holds that yes, you can use Breira, or Chachamim say that your Eruv is not an Eruv, which implies that Chachamim say there is no Breira. But there clearly is an opinion that says that there is Breira for Eruvin. So what do you? So this raises this question: is clearly there is an opinion that states that you can use Breira with Eruvin. So what are you trying to say that you can't? Right, but didn't we hear Rabbi Shimon that he doesn't hold a Breira based on the case we saw of the separating out the bottom of the wine barrel that you bought from the Kuti? So Kasha Rabbi Shimon. So that means that Rabbi Shimon is arguing. He's got one time where he says you can use Breira, and one time he says you cannot. No, no, rather you should flip it around, and that's what'll solve our issue. Right? So and then once you reverse it, that would mean that Rabbi Shimon is consistent, whereas and then the Chachamim would have switched over to saying that there is no Breira. That there is Breira. So my kasha, Rabbi Shimon Breira b'doraita v'derbanan itlei. So now we're like, what do you mean? Why is this a big issue? Why does it mess around with Rabbi Shimon's opinion? Say that Eruvin, which is Derbanan is when he allows it, but in the Doraita case, that of the Shumar Masro, that's when he does not accept Breira. So Rav Yosef, man the itle Breira, loshna b'Doraita, loshna b'Derbanan, itle. No, Rav Yosef's opinion is that either you believe in Breira or you don't believe in Breira. If you believe in Breira, it applies whether it be for a Doraita or for Derbanan. But you say there's no such thing as retroactive designation. Loshna b'Doraita, loshna b'Derbanan, late play. So it's all or nothing, right? Either you always allow for retroactive designation, or you never allow for retroactive designation, but you can't switch it between the two of them. So Rabba Amar Shanihatan B'inan Reshit Shira Nikarim. Now Rabba says no. The case by starting on Maser is different because there's a separate drasha of Reshit. Right, we say Reshit Degancha. So what does that mean? That it has to be the recognizable, right? The remnants are recognizable, meaning when you separate out the Trumot and Maser, you have to be able to immediately see where it is. It's not an issue with Breira. It's an issue that you simply can't visualize where the Trumot and Maser are currently located. So Amar Abaye El Miata. Rather learn that from here instead. Hayulafan of Shtei Rumanim Shel Tevel. So Abaye says you had in front of you two different pomegranates that had yet to have the Trumot and Maser separated from them. The Amar. So right, so Hakanami ben Yardu ben Lo Yardu ain Medaram Klom. So here, so the question is as follows. So Abaye said rather we should learn the concept of about Rav Yosef had said that either there's always Breira or there isn't Breira. So now we're going to question the opinion based off of making a conditional separation of your Trumot and Maser from your pomegranate. So there's two of them in front of you that need to have their Trumot and Maser separated. Then you say if it rains today, then pomegranate A will be Truma for pomegranate B. But if it does not rain today, then pomegranate B will be the truma for pomegranate A. Right, so the switch, right? Is it A for B or B for A? And what determines it will be whether or not it rains today. So, right, so would you that mean to say that whether the rain did or didn't fall, that it's no good? Right, so meaning because they said that according to Rabbi Shimon, the issue is that you need to have it be clear which, when you're stating it, which items are considered to be truma. And here you can't tell which one it is yet because it hasn't rained yet. So therefore, at the moment, you don't have the cut of shiur and ikarin. You don't have the truma masra being noticeable, recognizable as of right now. So what is it? So if you want to say that's fine, right? You're right. Correct. You're right. In that case, we say it wouldn't work. You've tried to say those conditions. Rishon would say that's no good. Hatanan truma hakri umasar tabu tocho. Utruma maaser zavu tocho. Rabbi Shimon omer kara Hashem. Wait. So now we're saying Rabbi Shimon. It seems like he says that he has this interesting drasha for truma and maaser. You need to be able to recognize which one is the truma and the maaser when you separate them, or it's no good. So now we're asking, wait, but doesn't he say we have another case that he has where if you have a truma, if you wanted to say the words that this pile of truma will be here, and the maaser will be within it, and truma maaser will also be contained within that same pile. And Rabbi Shimon says that that's a valid way of separating out truma and maaser. So we'll say, like, how is that possible, right? Right? He said because like karashay means that it works, meaning it's not considered to be truma. But it's like, wait, but you can't. But it's all in a pile. How are you designating between truma and not truma? It's all in a pile right now. What are you talking about? It should be no good according to Rabbi Shimon. How's he saying it's okay? No, shani hatam the ika sviva. Now there's different because there are recognizable amounts around it. So yes, the truma. So he's saying that the truma should be inside of the heap, but because the pile isn't right? So it's not like a uniform pile. It's it's a little lumpy. So he sees one pile that's sticking up from everything else. And he says that one is the one we're going to pick, and in the middle of that pile. So basically, there is so you can tell that only in a certain area is there a little higher lump, but the rest of it couldn't be it because it's not considered to be in the little tower. It's just somewhere farther out. So that those can't be. So even though you're right, you don't know precisely which one it is, but because you can tell that there is an area that's allowed, an area that's not allowed visually, that's what allows it to work. As opposed to the case of wine, where there's absolutely no way for you to tell which one is which. The BAYT ema Tiktani Tama. So the other one, or we can give you another reason. So what's this other reason? So Amrulol or Meir, Iatamoda Shemi Bakahanod, Benimsa Zeshatet Tolim Mafreya. Amrulahen Lifishayibaka. So now there's another question that was asked on the mission of the Kuchim of, are you allowed to make the designation now for later? So the Chaim asked Meir, you wait. So why are you allowing people to do this? What happens if while you're drinking, the whole flask bursts to pieces? So the nimsa zensho tetzvelin mafreya, and then retroactively, you'll have been drinking tevel because it means it didn't work. If you lose the truma and masra, they're not separated in the end. Then you didn't actually probably separate truma and masra because there's nothing left then because you never actually finished drinking what you wanted to drink. So Amar Lahan l'kashibaka. I said no. When it bursts, I will deal with that. But I'm not. But we don't worry about maybes. So like true, if it had burst, you would be in hot water. But we're not worried about the question of Brera. So that implies that the whole argument that we had in that mission about can you separate based on the bottle of the barrel of the large flask of wine is actually based on the question of whether or not it'll burst or not. Spontaneous combustion, right? Will suddenly explode. So are we worried about that or not? So that implies that it's nothing to do with prayer, like we've been hoping, we've been constructing until now. Ulamai is Selagadatin, Mekar, Be'inan Reshit, Shiria, Nikar, and my Kamerle. And according to the initial thought we had about that unit of recognizable remnants, then why did the Chachamim ask for Meir about maybe it'll explode? My Kamerle, why do you ask that? So rather what he said is, Halchi Kamerle. Now here's what he said to him. According to the Chachamim, Zidan Be'inan Reshit Sherani Kari. Chachamim say we require that you can distinguish what is or is not considered to be, as is this moment, the Trumot and Masra. Right? That drasha of Reshit means Sherani Karin. So they have that drasha. L'didah. But according to you, and now heading on to Lamed Chedem and Aleph. Right, so we say that it has to be recognizable. So therefore, we have no issues of why I say it's no good. But for you, aren't you worried at the very least that maybe it'll explode? So that, right, so we are saying no good because of, well, you didn't separate out the way we think it's separate out. But for you, even if this is a proper separation, are you really going to allow people to do it? What if the container breaks? Right? When it bursts, but it's so unlikely that's not something we have to be worried about. Okay, so we dealt with a lot of what ifs, if this, then that. And as well as temporal gaps based on the use of rare. So I'm gonna sum up, and then if anyone has any questions, feel free to ask them. Hopefully, it'll be clear. Because I know it's a little confusing with Brera because you're dealing with skipping through time and changing your mind in the middle. So again, we started with the Mishnah talking about when you have an Eruv. Question is, are you designating your Eruv in one direction or in two directions, based on whether or not the non-Jews come to try and collect your taxes, based on whether or not you're the Chacham, the person, the wise person coming to get to, you want to hear him lecture. So like whichever one of those. So basically, there's all the different setups in the Mishnah of how you'll do that and why you're allowed to make an Erev Tchumen al Tanai, whether you'll go or you won't go. Then we're asking, well, how is this possible? Because Io says you're not allowed to make that. So the case is you're only choosing, should I be here or there, right? So we said that was okay because, like, if the wise man's coming from the east, because he's already there, all you're really doing is, just you already decided that you're going to him, just you didn't know where yet. So you really decided, just you were missing some information. So that's not really a problem. So we got dealt with that. But the thing is, though, but there's other cases that appear to be that there's very much you are trying to make a decision based on the fact you don't have yet. Not just as facts you don't have yet, but on decisions that haven't been made by anybody yet. So then we spoke about the case of buying wine from a kuti who did not separate the Trumot and Masra properly, and how we questioned the Machloket. Rabbi Meir, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yosef, Rabbi Shimon about can you separate out the Trumot and Masra when you start or not? So that was the question. Can I separate my Trumot and Masra and say that by saying whatever is left at the bottom of the bottle will be apportioned according to Truma, Maaser, and Maaser Sheni? Can I do that? Is that a valid statement for me to say? So Rabbi Meir said no, Rabbi Yehuda, Rabbi Yossi, and Rabbi Shimon said not. And then we said this runs to issues with Io. Like, is Io clearly an argument? They were like, no, there's two opinions, two sets of opinions here, so that's fine. And then the question was, well, maybe we should rephrase the order, who holds what opinion? And then we started dealing with trying to figure out how, analyzing each person as to what is their opinion consistent amongst all their statements throughout Shas. So first we had the case of Rabbi Yosef's opinion. We spoke about the case of the determination of the birds brought for a korban of two women. Do they have to determine it when they're buying it before they hand to the Kohen, or can the Kohen do so? And then we concluded at the end of the day that either they can make the condition when they buy it, or it could be the condition of which one it's for a chata, which one is for an ola, which one the bird is for which purpose of the korban. So that's something that the Kohen can decide whether it's meant to be a completely burned offering or a sin offering. That the Kohen is allowed to, because that's for Chassid's explicit opinion. And then we kept going on about the case of a chaver, somebody who's scrupulous about Tribun Masrot, gives it over, is buying something on behalf of his unscrupulous friend, the Amaretz, and whether or not he has to separate immediately or not. Then we then we had switching around of the opinions in that one. And then we also had another case of based on separating Tribun Masrot based on the coin that'll come out of your pocket. And we say that that's Rabbi Yossi says it works, and so that would imply that Rabbi Yossi is doing something wrong, like that he's saying that you can use braver now while you couldn't do braver earlier. So it's like, so what, is he being inconsistent? So then we said no, maybe. Then we're like, well, maybe we've been doing the wrong thing from the flipping. Then we said no, that's not the case, because really one of the Beit we know for sure is wrong because of the latter half, and if otherwise his differentiation between why it does work or doesn't work is entirely incidental. So rather, we must say that we should be switching them, and Rabbi Yossi really does hold that you cannot use any retroactively designating. Right. Then we dealt with a language issue in the Beit. So we said it's actually based on parallel language, and then we moved on to the case of setting up the Eruv for 5 people, for having you setting up 5 Eruvs and saying, oh, so if that's a valid thing to do. Then according to Rabbi Shimon, he says that you're allowed to decide even on Shabbos which one of the 5 you wanted. That implies that he allows for braver then, whereas he's not allowing for it in the case of wine, and we're like, why not? So, right, how's he doing that? So rather we say that it works because that maybe we differentiate between Derabanan versus Deraita. Then we had Rav Yosef saying it's all or nothing. There's no picking. So then it's like, you're right. So maybe we have to fix. Then we say there's another drasha that we have to know about Truma and Masra, that when you separate Truma and Masra, according to Rabbi Shimon and according to Chaim, it needs to be clear what you're separating, and that's the whole issue. That's behind that's in the issue with the Kutim, the Mishnah about the Kutim. That's the primary problem we're dealing with. Can you see that they're separated or not? You said you need to see that it's separated clearly, then it's no good. If not. Then we brought a similar case based on pomegranates about where it seemingly is wrong. And then we say no, it's because with the wine you have no clue. Whereas the pomegranate piles, at least you have, or the piles of food, you at least have some degree of understanding of what's where. And finally, we got to the case of the continuation of the Mishnah, where the Chachamim tell Reb Meir, aren't you worried about your container exploding? That would imply that the issue has nothing to do with retroactive designation. Nothing to do with the drasha of you need to be able to tell where it is, and that implies that it is according to Chachamim, the way they explain this machlokes is all based on likelihood of exploding of the container, and then that would mean that you retroactively are having something wrong because your initial separation turned out to be no good. Because even if you hold that there is such a thing as brera, right? If you never got around to doing the thing, never happened, then well, you never separated it properly, and then you're stuck. So instead, we decided to reread it a little bit. We said that the Chachamim said that we have the drasha of that it's clear that you need to clearly recognizable. They're asking Reb Meir, how about you? What is your worry? Like, shouldn't you, even though you don't hold of this drasha that we have of that, you have to make sure it's clear where it is, where the Truma and Masra are, you able to see it with your eyes. So they're saying, but shouldn't you still forbid people to have this practice of separating out on the bottom of the container? Maybe the container will break. So he says, no, I'm not worried about that. What matters is that right now things are good, and as long as things are good right now, that means that I currently have a valid separation, and yes, I'm applying brera, but that's not a part of my opinion. Okay, so that's it for today. Wish you a very good day. And we will pick up tomorrow with the Mishnah on Lamed Chet Amud Aleph.
Okay, thank you.